G'day guys, I'm D-Mac from NBA Fantasy Bible, and along with me is Kayla Fonte, and together we're Between Two Hoops. How are you, Kayla?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Yeah, doing really, really well. It's, again, been a huge week in the NBA, a lot to discuss, and actually today we have a special guest. Really excited, but firstly, before we get to that, how's your week been?
So far, it's actually been pretty good. The injuries are kind of hitting me a little bit hard, especially Halliburton, but I'm surviving. How about you?
Yeah. Well, look, overnight we got some decent news, actually.
Mhm.
Overnight for me, anyway. Grade one strain, which isn't too bad. It's probably looking like that was the best outcome of what it appeared like at first when he was being carried off the court by his teammates. It was looking
Very
pretty
scary.
dicey. Looking like potentially that could have been season over for not just him, not just him, but even Indiana as well. He's the alpha on that team, but a lot of fantasy managers were very, very worried
Mhm.
just by their reaction. But yeah, good news overnight. It was probably the best outcome, but we'll get to that shortly. But before we go any further, shall we introduce our guest?
Yeah, it's a very exciting episode.
Absolutely. Kingy, welcome. Adam King, how are you?
Yeah, good, mate. Thanks for getting up so early, and because I know you guys normally record at a different time of the day, so thanks for squeezing me in.
We do. It's 5 a.m. here in Perth at the moment, but we've got you in Canberra and we've got Kayla obviously in Toronto. So yeah, sometimes you just have to be flexible to be able to get the best on and best in the business. But lead analyst of Fantasy Basketball International, much esteemed analyst. I've been following you for quite some time, but yeah, fantastic to have you on, Kingy.
Yeah, no, it's good to be here. Like I said off air, I just like talking about basketball, and
Yeah.
I don't have any of my shows scheduled for today, so why not jump on and talk to some new people about it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're very
No, it's really
excited.
good. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. All right. Without further ado, shall we get into it?
Let's dive in.
Yep.
All right. Okay, guys, let's go through. So this is our normal format. So let's look at our hot performers and sell highs. Let's start with Wemby. Not the highest of sell highs, but I've got him here for a reason. Now, in the last 7 days, he's been a wonderful performer. He's been 12th in 9 cats, 10th in terms of points rankings, but I'll just highlight his minutes. So he's been doing this in 25 and a half minutes per game, which is pretty outstanding. This guy is obviously being rested to a degree. He's missing back-to-backs or one half of a back-to-back every single week now, and this will probably carry on for quite some time, if not from now until the end of the season. But he's still putting up fantastic numbers. Kayla and Adam, what can you say about Wemby?
Yeah, his overall impact is just surreal. He has value in several categories, but he's just on a whole other level with those points, those blocks, rebounds, and he's also seeing that increased usage as a result of that Zach Collins injury too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm lucky enough to have him in one league, and yeah, look, I mean, selling high, it's certainly it's going to be tough, I think, to do just because, as you said, he is resting those back to backs. He's on a minute restriction, so people are going to be a little bit cautious, I think, about giving someone up, and you're going to have to give up someone pretty good to get him. I've already projected. I think most of us will end up projecting him for next season to be probably he'll definitely be a first rounder. I think he'll probably go inside the top 6 next season. So you're going to have to give up, a first round player. And I just think with that uncertainty moving forward, it would be tough to sell high. But honestly, he's so much fun to roster. So if you've got him on your roster, I'd just hold him and enjoy it.
Yeah, and I am enjoying it as well. I have him in a keeper league, which is practically a dynasty league for us. And I'm thinking next year he's going to be top 3 dynasty pick, if not number 1, to be honest. I think you would even pick him above Jokic and even Doncic, to be honest. But yeah, hard to sell high, but it's really fun, really fantastic to watch as well. But yeah, keep an eye out for that one. Next one, Kyrie Irving. He's been the number 1 fantasy player in 9cat over the last week, which is outstanding. He's come back and he's looking awesome. He's working well alongside of Luka Doncic as well. But first in 9cat, 13th for the season, which he's come up quite quickly over the last since he's returned as well. But even from a points perspective, Kayla, I know your points league expertise and extraordinaire there. But yeah, he's looking fantastic even from a points league perspective.
Yeah, he's been great. He returned, I think, about 4 games ago, and it only took one match for him to really just find his footing. And since then, he's just taken off. And it's just that multi category value that he brings, which makes him so valuable in categories and points leagues.
Yeah. Kingy?
Yeah, look, I don't have Kyrie anywhere. I sort of shied away from him a little bit in drafts, but we know who he is. Like, he's a first round player when he's healthy. If you wanted to try and sell high, certainly worth a shot. But people tend to remember things especially when it comes to injury or players that are viewed as injury prone. A lot of his absences haven't been injuries; they've just been other things, which we don't need to go into details about all that. But so yeah, look, if you could sell him high, certainly give it a crack. But I think that as long as he's healthy, he's going to be a top 15, top 12 guy rest of season. You just have to cross your fingers that he stays healthy.
Yeah, and you look at the ADP at the start of the season as well, and it was around that zone, and I think he was coming up, and there was a little bit of hesitation with some of the other injury-prone guys with AD and Kevin Durant as well. So he's around ADP, which is good. Huge sell high at the moment. You look at some of those numbers in the last week, but look at those rebound numbers. Some of that's, I guess, with Derek Lively also sidelined as well. So perhaps he's getting some more rebounds there, which is quite unusual for him. But yeah, steal numbers as well. That really stands out for me over the last week. But yeah, again, if you have him and you can't sell high, just enjoy it. And he's going to help you towards hopefully a fantasy championship this season. Next guy, Paolo Banchero. Now, we know of his limitations in terms of category leagues, but he's still been fantastic across the last 7 days. To be honest, over the last 3 to 4 weeks, he's been really good. But in points leagues, he's just taken it up even another level, and he's just been outstanding. A lot of this has come off the back of Franz Wagner being out as well, so he's really dominated a lot of the usage. You look at the usage numbers in the last week, 36.2%. That's elite. That's unbelievable. But he's quite the player, isn't he?
Oh, definitely is. I'm lucky enough to have him in one of my points leagues, and he won me my week. He carried my team single-handedly, and he's also been carrying the Magic too, with Wagner sidelined. He even posted his first career triple-double, which was a huge game for him, and he's just been great, very productive offensively, and he's giving you some of those defensive stats too, especially with steals.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at those steals, 2.0 over the last 7 days. I've got there just in every single category, he's actually elevated. I've got a bit of a color discrepancy there with his assists, but that's been elevated again with Franz Wagner being out. I know Markelle Fultz has returned recently to the side as well, so that may change the dynamic there, but he's just been fantastic. Now, Kingy, I know we know of his limitations in category leagues. We're more suited to our category leagues, and we'll get Kayla to speak about points leagues, but do you have Banchero anywhere?
No, I don't have him anywhere. He just didn't fit my builds this season in what I was drafting, that sort of thing. But he's been really good. And he's one of these guys that if you draft him, you're fully aware of his limitations. So the fact that, like you can see there on your graphic, that for the season he's 150th, but we know he's not the 150th best player. If you get rid of those percentages, then I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but I'm sure he comes up to be probably closer to a top 50 player. And he's certainly looked better this season on the offensive end. He is looking more confident. His shots are dropping a little bit more. And as you said, no Franz Wagner has helped. The fact that outside of him and Wagner, they don't really have any volume scorers on their team. Batadze, Wendell Carter, whoever's starting at center is not a high volume guy. So he just needs to score. So I think he's at 23.1 points for the season. I'd say next season he'll be up closer to 26, 27.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Now, how do you think the dynamic's going to go now that Markelle Fultz is back? There's a bit of a guard-heavy rotation now. You've still got Cole Anthony. Obviously, Jalen Suggs is performing fantastically, and he's looked better on the offensive end this season. But how do you see that dynamic, and do you think that'll eat into Paolo Banchero's usage?
I'm probably one of the higher people when it comes to Fultz. I held him this whole season, despite the uncertainty and the fact that we really didn't get a lot of updates. So it's good that he's back. I'm a little concerned that there was that video of him shooting and that hitch in his shot seems to have maybe returned. So a little bit concerned about that. I've still left him in my IR spot in a few leagues because I don't have to activate him yet. I think it's probably a week or two before he's back to anything close to what we wanted coming into the season. So I think when he's back in his normal role, starting, playing 30 minutes, it probably impacts Banchero's assist numbers a little bit. As you said there, his assists are up to 6.3 over the last week. So that probably comes down closer to 4. But yeah, look, I don't think there's a huge impact in terms of his scoring or rebounding or anything like that. So Banchero should be fine even once Fultz is healthy.
Yeah, I had Fultz as a keeper as well. So yeah, to start the season, it was pretty disappointing. I have now dropped him. I just think that he'll probably rest some of the games as well. So it's going to be difficult to hold him, but I like your strategy, keeping him in IR. I'm guessing that's a Fantrax league. It gives you that flexibility to do that, which is nice.
Yeah.
All right, really good. All right, let's move on to the next guy, Jaren Jackson Jr. Now, he's looked awesome in recent times. I know he's had quite a disappointing start, particularly with his ADP coming off the back of last season, where he's a first rounder in category leagues. For the season, he's 47th, which is actually a nice comeback. I think he was a lot higher than that just a few weeks ago. For the last 7 days, he's 7th in categories. Now, we know that a lot of his value is tied up in blocks, and there's no surprise that at 3.0 blocks per game over the last 7 days, that has really buoyed his numbers. But he's actually looked good across all categories there. You can see all greens in the last 7 days compared to his season. Now, Kayla, from a points perspective, still 21st, which is really good for him. But he's just not that dominant force in points leagues as he is compared to category leagues.
Yeah, it is a little bit different. Overall, though, we have seen pretty significant jumps in that offensive production, which has been great. Hopefully he continues that trend, especially with Ja out now. It kind of changes the dynamic a little bit there. But it's a good turnaround from those early season struggles that he was experiencing. He's also been great, like you said, in other categories too, mainly threes, which is very welcoming. Rebounds, blocks. Overall in points leagues, though, hopefully this is a trend that continues.
Yeah. Now, Kingy, do you think that now Ja Morant's out for the season? We'll get to that shortly, but will that change how JJJ has actually been playing? And people have talked about his block rate being better alongside of Ja Morant. Do you think that changes now that Ja's out for the season?
Yeah, I mean, based what we saw in the first 25 games, whatever that was, 2 months, there's a chance that happens just because I think with no Ja there, he's required to do so much more on the offensive end. Not having Steven Adams, I think, has really sort of gone under the radar this year in terms of the impact it's had on Jaren Jackson because they just don't have a centre. I think the long-term plan is that Jaren Jackson will become their centre, but I still think they're a couple of years away from that. So they're going to be rolling out Bismack Biyombo, Xavier Tillman, whoever. They seem to change their mind every night. So, yeah, look, I think it's going to be a situation to monitor, certainly with no Ja. Having Marcus Smart there, I think, helps, though. He was obviously out for a significant portion of that Ja absence as well. So, and I think with Jaren Jackson, one thing that also people don't think about too much, because you tend to, if you look at Jaren Jackson, you tend to look at his numbers. And yes, they are down, his block numbers. But the fact that I think block numbers across the league are up this year. So that impacts his value because we've got Wemby and we've got Chet, we've got Walker Kessler. We've got all these guys who can get 2.5, 3 blocks a night consistently. So that makes a difference, I think.
Yeah, and that was my hesitation about drafting JJJ so early in drafts as well, just because a lot of his value was tied up in blocks. And as we knew, Chet was coming into the season, Wemby was coming into the season, obviously, all these other guys, even Dan Gafford to a certain degree, all these guys could get 2 blocks per game, as you were saying. So, yeah, a lot of that value is diminished just because there's other guys that can not win you that category by themselves, but can then contribute to those wins for that category. So, yeah, JJJ, I still think, look, I've got him on the sell high, but perhaps there's a narrative where he's actually a buy low, where someone thinks, God, now Ja's out. Will Memphis look to rest Jaren Jackson down the stretch? It could happen, but perhaps he could actually be a buy low, to be honest. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out.
Yeah, and I think I just pulled up numbers. So I think I remember talking with a few analysts at the beginning of the season about how many guys this season could average over 2 blocks a game, and we were sort of hedging our bets and saying, well, it could be 10, it could be 15. At the moment, we're at where are we? We're at 10, I think. So 10 players are averaging at least 2 blocks a game, and Jaren Jackson isn't one of those. He's at 1.8, and we've then got Kristaps Porzingis. Like Goga Bitadze is averaging 1.7 blocks, so no one would have considered him coming into the season. So there's a lot of shot blocking talent around at the moment.
Yeah, it's a good segue into Isaiah Hartenstein as well. He's probably not there in terms of the overall blocks per game for the season, so he's at 1.1. But just across, since Mitch Robinson's gone down, he's been a beast as your big man replacement. But over the last 7 days, 3 blocks per game. But look at those steal numbers as well, 2.0 blocks per game. He's really been fantastic. And for those that picked him up after the Mitch Robinson news broke of the injury for the season, fantastic, really good work. Now, do you guys have Hartenstein?
I do. I rushed to pick him up.
Yeah, he's been awesome. Yeah, he's looked really good, and I think he's been a nice fit for the Knicks. And I know there's a lot of media that don't really rate him, but I think from a fantasy perspective, we knew that he's got this game, he's got this ability. He's very fantasy friendly game, but now it's come to fruition. He's getting the minutes. It did help several games back. A few weeks ago when Jericho Sims, he did start a particular game. He went out injured. I think he sprained his ankle. Hartenstein played a huge game in that. And since then, he's started every single game and he's looked fantastic. But yeah, 9th in 9K over the last 7 days is a huge sell high. I'm not saying that he's not going to be great the rest of the season, given that at this stage, the Knicks will look to keep rolling him at the 5. But I still think he's a massive sell high at this stage.
I think so too. And overall, he's just very underrated. But I think people now are starting to realize his value. And while these huge numbers might not be sustainable for the rest of the season, he's going to give you close to that value.
Kingy, do you think, look, if the Knicks don't trade for a center, do you think he can be a top 50 player the rest of the way?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think he could even flirt with top 30 value if. Yeah, I mean, things obviously need to go his way. And I think, Kayla was lucky enough to get him. I got him in one league as well. People were probably, it made sense to grab him. But again, people remember certain things. And we remember that last year they started Jericho Sims. Taj Gibson was there. And then they went and signed Taj Gibson and people were freaking out and thinking they just don't want to give Hartenstein these minutes. But I think we've seen over the last, as you said, the last couple of weeks, he's been starting, he's playing big minutes. They're winning, which I think helps his case as well. So, yeah, I think he can probably be top 30, top 40. People tend to focus a lot on points, so scoring, and he's not a big scorer. He's only going to get you 9 or 10 points, but he's had some big rebound games. The blocks are there. As you said, the steals. So I think he's probably close to 3 combined steals and blocks for the rest of the season with 12 rebounds. And that alone is top 50 value.
Yeah, and it's so difficult to find high-level rebounds on the waiver wire these days as well. So, yeah, I would agree with that. I would think that he's definitely going to be a top 50 player, given that no other center does return. And he's just... Yeah, since the trade with Toronto as well, people were thinking, geez, is Precious Achiuwa going to actually take some of his minutes away? And that's definitely not been the case. They've since waived, I think this was yesterday, they've waived Taj Gibson, which was somewhat surprising as Tibbs and Taj go back a long way. But yeah, he's just really taken that center role with 2 hands, and he's just going to keep running with it, which is fantastic for us fantasy managers.
Yeah, look, he's almost a little bit like a drummer. If you think Andre Drummond like 4 years ago when he was relevant, he didn't score a lot, but he got tons of boards and not a lot of blocks, like 1.2, 1.3, but averaged 1.5 steals as well. So he's in that, but he's obviously a better free throw shooter than Andre Drummond.
Yeah. Now, Andre Drummond has been relevant recently. We spoke about him last episode, Kayla, and we said that he was probably going to lose some value, and we can speak about this later on, but he's looked okay alongside of Vucevic as well since he's come back. But yeah, we'll speak about that later. But another big man, Jarrett Allen, he's been on quite the tear in recent times. And I did tweet this out when Evan Mobley went down with injury and he would be out for a few more weeks to go. And I thought that this would just open up some time for Jarrett Allen. Just the ability, I know they don't play the center role all the time, but Jarrett Allen not having Evan Mobley come and back him up at center just gave him that the freedom just to be able to really expand his game, even on the offensive end. But you look at some of those rebound numbers as well. That's huge. Steals are nice. The blocks could even come up a little bit as well. But he's just been on quite the tear. 5th in 9-cat over the last 7 days and 12th in points, which is quite unheard of for someone with his type of stat set.
It's just overall insane. And I think Mobley is projected to return sometime in early February. So we still have about a month more of this kind of level of production from Allen. And you even mentioned this last episode too, but the assists have been insane. And it's something that he's still maintained, which has been a bit surprising, but very welcome.
Yeah, I think Cleveland like their big man to be a bit of a playmaker as well. Evan Mobley was quite the same, similar sort of mold. But something that stands out for me is the free throw percentage. What is that? 92.3 on 4.3 attempts per game. Unheard of for him. He's been relatively solid, particularly for a big man. For the season, 73.4%, but 92.3. He's turned into an offensive juggernaut at this stage. But 22.5% usage, that's probably a career high for him at this stage. But Kingy, do you have Jarrett Allen anywhere?
No, I don't have Jarrett Allen, unfortunately. But yeah, look, he's been fantastic. I think of all these names, this is the guy you want to be selling high. It's going to be tough because, as Kayla said, we've probably got about another month here of top 20 value, whatever he ends up doing. But if you want to try and get ahead of it, you probably need to do it in the next week or so, because then we'll start getting word that Mobley he's back doing some 2-on-2, or he's not taking contact, but he's back with the team. And then people will start to go, well, no, I don't want Jarrett Allen. So you do need to start sort of floating those trade offers out there. And that's hard given what he's been doing the last few weeks. And those assist numbers have been really nice. I think no Darius Garland for 3 weeks or however long he's been out has helped that. Donovan Mitchell isn't really a point guard. Karis LeVert, some nights he is, some nights he's not. So it's, now or in the next 7 days would probably be when I'd be looking to move Jarrett Allen, but it's going to be hard given how good he's been.
Yeah, a lot of it, and particularly with Jarrett Allen, but often with trades, it's all about timing as well. So you're probably going to miss out on, as you said, top 20 type of numbers over the following 3 weeks until Mobley's back. But this is the time that you look to sell high, and you'd be looking for someone maybe in the top 30 as well. If he's 45th for the season in terms of category leagues, if you could get a top 30 guy back, I think you try to do that as well. Any other thoughts, Kayla?
All I have to say, just capitalize on it while you can. Like you said, Kingy, you have about a week before people start to realize that Mobley is returning. So try and get as much as you can for him.
That's it. All right, guys. In contrast, let's move on to our disappointments, but also our buy low opportunities. Firstly, Scotty Barnes. Now, since the trade, RJ Barrett's been in the team. Emmanuel Quickly's come into the team as well. He hasn't been at the same level. Over the last week, he's 81st in category leagues, 85th in points leagues, as opposed to on the season, he's been a first rounder in categories. What's been the change, guys?
I think the main thing is just adjusting to new teammates and figuring out your role through that. So as we know, it kind of takes a little bit of time after a trade to adjust to that. I think he should be able to bounce back probably close to where he was before. Hopefully at least. He was still pretty decent in my points leagues, but then again, all the settings are different and the values are different. But it's hopefully something that he could return to. Yeah,
Kingy.
Yeah, it's I do I have him in a league? I don't know. I'm in so many leagues. I've probably got him somewhere, but he look, I think there's obviously the trade impacted him. I think in a couple of ways. As Kayla said, he's getting used to playing alongside RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly, who are offensive-minded players. So that's taking away a little bit of that responsibility on that end of the court. But they also lost OG Anunoby, who was arguably or likely their best defensive player. So Barnes is being forced to play that role a little bit more, which is taking him away from the basket. So his rebound numbers are down. Now, no Jakob Poeltl for the next 2 weeks, which I think will chat about soon, that might. We don't know what they're going to do with their lineup. I've already had questions on Twitter this morning about who do we add and do I pick up Chris Boucher? I think I've had 3 people ask me that. I don't know if Chris Boucher can play a 30-minute role on a team that's trying to win. So they might end up going with Siakam at the 5 and just sort of shifting everyone up and maybe bringing Gary Trent or Dennis Schroeder back into the starting lineup. So it's a bit of a wait and see. And so I do think that Barnes is going to just continue to be a little bit up and down for the next little bit, but he'll definitely be a lot better than this. I'm not sure he gets back to where he was. He was almost a first-round player. Well, he is a first-round player on the season. So I'm not sure he's going to be that good. So you've probably missed the sell high opportunity, but I'd hold him, and I think he probably ends up settling back in at sort of 25 to 30.
Right. Yeah, I was just going to ask you around what would you take if someone had offered you, let's say, a trade for Scotty Barnes. So you're thinking around that 25 mark is where he'll probably end up by the end of the season.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's probably a back-end second round, early third round or something like that.
Yeah.
A lot of his value early in the season was buoyed by the defensive numbers. So that will be, I mean, in theory, if he's playing more that OG role, his steal numbers might come up, but his block numbers are probably going to come down.
Yeah, and I've had a few questions on Twitter just around his offensive output, but I've just responded by saying, look, his game's not predicated necessarily on high usage. And yeah, it's slightly down over the last 7 days since the trade, but overall for the season, 23% is quite low for someone that they would expect him to be the leader of the team, the alpha of the team. But 23% is probably not as high as what you would expect from a superstar, on the verge of superstardom, I would say. But yeah, that's not his game. So I think, it's really the defensive numbers, but it's a bit of a holding pattern at the moment. So I still think he's a great buy low opportunity, but let's see how it plays out, just with the dynamic, particularly with, as Kingy mentioned, with Jakob Poeltl going to miss at least the next couple of weeks. Next one, the King, LeBron James. Now, in the last 7 days, 91st in category leagues, which has been disappointing compared to his overall rank of 17th. And we'll get to why that is, but he hasn't taken as much of a hit in points leagues. And let's be honest, it's really coming down to his shooting splits as well. Looking at field goal percentage, 45.9% over the last week compared to over 50%. And as well as the free throws, quite disappointing, 61.5. That's punt free throw category type of territory for me as well. So his usage is slightly down, but nothing significant as well. The points are slightly down, the threes are slightly down, but it's really just shooting splits that have really been impactful in terms of his overall ranking in the last week.
Yeah, he did slow down a bit, but like you mentioned, in points leagues, it wasn't as noticeable compared to categories. I think the worst game that he had was on January 3rd. Absolutely atrocious. But the other 2 games since then, they've been actually pretty solid, but he still has slowed down quite a bit.
Yeah, I think I don't have LeBron anywhere. I was just, I don't know, I was a bit off him this season. And look, I was wrong. Like, he's been fantastic. But if we remember back to the first game of the season, I think, when Darvin Ham came out and said, we're going to limit him, he's going to play under 30 minutes a night. Since then, he probably hasn't played under 30 minutes in any game. He's averaging about 35 minutes a night. And there was a reason they were going to limit him. He's old. So it makes sense that the amount he's having to do on this team, he's going to slow down. His percentages are going to be a little bit inconsistent. He needs to get some rest, and he hasn't had any rest. Despite being questionable every night, he's going to play. So, yeah, I didn't draft him, and he's obviously proved me wrong, but I'm still not convinced he can maintain what he's been doing rest of season, because I know he's this freak and father time, all that whole discussion, but he's getting older and he needs help. And at the moment, he's not getting it. And they're dealing with a few injuries. So.
Yeah, every time someone says that LeBron's old, I feel way older as well. I'm the same age as LeBron as well, so we're both 39. I struggle to get out of bed most days, so he's doing this at 39. It's quite tremendous, to be honest, but I was the same. I was hesitant. I didn't think he would even play 50 games. The over-under of 50 games is about that line this season. He's looking like he will smash that, but of course, there's still half the season to go, half the regular season to go. So a lot to play out. But yeah, he's playing huge amount of minutes right now for a 39-year-old. But him and AD are always listed as probable, sometimes questionable, but always end up playing. It's just, I think he is a buy low, but again, there's always that level of risk. Just if the things don't play out nicely for the Lakers and it's looking like it's going to be another disappointing season. Look, they had some highs with the in-season tournament, but this is not what they were playing for. But if it's looking like it's not going in the right direction, they may look to shake things up with a few trades here and there. It could go down. So I've got him on the buy low just based on his overall numbers, but I myself don't want to take that risk on for myself. But I don't know if you guys would avoid trading for LeBron, or if you're all in, you want to buy low on him.
I avoid at all costs. I will never draft LeBron, and I will never trade for him. He is a great player, don't get me wrong, but it's just those injury concerns that always make me really hesitant. And I don't think he's worth that risk for at least what my build is trying to be.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why I didn't draft him. And if I was to trade for him, I just think that whoever has him would want too much from me, more than I'd be prepared to give up. So congratulations to those who did pick him up, and he's been great. And look, maybe he proves us all wrong, and he plays 70 games and he keeps his averages going. But yeah, I'm happy to leave that to someone else.
Yeah, I'm with you. Let's look back at the end of the season. We can review it, but yeah, I'm with you. I would like to avoid that risk. Next one, DeJounte Murray, 175th in the last 7 days. That's extremely disappointing. He's been 51st for the season, which again is also quite disappointing. I think his ADP was around, between 30 and 40. So 51st on the season is quite disappointing. For the last week, 65th in points. So again, he's not taken that much of a hit. And again, that's coming down to usage. Just look at the free throw percentage, but also just look at the steal rate. We knew of DeJounte just being an elite steals getter, and 0.0 across the last 7 days. I think that's 3, maybe 4 games, but no steals from DeJounte Murray. That's obviously that's hit his value.
Yeah, we all know that he doesn't have the best fit playing alongside Trae Young, but this week has just been really disappointing, and he had noticeable slips on the playmaking and defensive end, which is what a lot of people rely on him for. And the only boost that he really provided was points, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, in our industry pickup league, I made a trade to get him, and all I needed him for was assists and steals, and I probably traded 2 weeks ago, and I just pulled up his game log, and he has, what if we go back 2-ish weeks, he has 1 steal, well, maybe 3, depending how far you go back, and hasn't recorded more than 4 assists in 5 or 6 of those 7 games. And look, yeah, the points have been nice, but I don't need him to score. And yeah, I think Atlanta are probably going to look to move him. I think he still has quite a lot of value. I don't think he's played himself out of a big contract or anything like that. I think smart teams will realise that this was purely a fit thing. He just doesn't fit alongside Trae Young. So I think whoever ends up getting him, if they do trade him, it would probably be viewed as a win-win for both Atlanta and whoever picks him up.
Yeah, I'd agree. I've seen quite a lot of trade rumors. Of course, we see Lakers rumors as well. So any team that's looking for an elite point guard, he hasn't been able to play that role alongside a Trae. But back from his Spur days, he was that first rounder for quite some time as well. For that one season, he was just elite. I don't think he'll ever get back to that, but he'll be better than 51st overall in 9-cat. So let's hope for his sake that a trade does go through. But yeah, even if he stays at the Hawks, I think he's still a buy low, just for the fact that he's been really low on the steals in the last week or so. Next one, Donovan Mitchell. Now, he's had an awesome season. He's just had a bit of a dip in the last week, 109th overall. So I'd say 9-cat in the last 7 days, 51st in points. So taking quite a bit of a hit, reduced minutes. There was a couple of blowouts there, so he didn't have to play as much. And just look at those points numbers. So 21.7 points per game is just something that you don't expect out of your number one, particularly as Darius Garland is sidelined as well. But we spoke about Jared Allen earlier. So he's picked up the slack on the offensive end, but Donovan Mitchell's taken a step back, which has been fine for Cleveland. And they've got that game in Paris on Thursday. So a one-game week has been quite disappointing for those that do have any Cavs or Nets. But I'm looking at him turning it around pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think so too. He had a pretty significant drop off in points, which is pretty surprising given the amount of injuries that the Cavaliers are going through right now. He also struggled with efficiency, and even though his threes are up, he really struggled shooting from beyond the arc in that last game. But like you said, it's something that he'll probably turn around. Every player goes through that slump, and this is just what he's going through right now.
Yeah, and this is a really small sample size, 7 days, and sometimes that could be 2, maybe 3 games. So for those that do look at numbers and look at Basketball Monster or hashtag basketball, whatever they use, and they only go back 7 days, it's quite deceptive. If they go back a little bit longer, he's just been fantastic. And yeah, for that reason, if people were just to really look at the last 7 days, he's a huge buy low. But he's going to turn it around very quick, smart. Like you said, Kayla, I think it's just the points output that's going to be a nice quick turnaround. I don't see that many blowouts where he's not going to play more than 30 minutes, to be honest. I think that's just going to keep going. Darius Garland, I think he's set to return maybe 3 weeks or so. So there's still that room for him to pick it up on the assist side of things as well. So big buy low for me. Kingy, do you have any other thoughts on that?
No, it's pretty, like if you, as you said, go into Basketball Monster or hashtag or whatever you use and have a look, and his points are down, but they had those 2 blowouts where he only played 24 minutes. And it's really just his free throws. I think it just highlights how influential a category like that can be for a player who's high volume. So his free throws are just way down, and that drags his value down by about 3 or 4 rounds. So he'll turn this around. They do only have 1 game this week, so he's got time to figure out whatever's going on. But yeah, I'm not too worried. I mean, if you wanted to try and buy low, but if his manager has any common sense, they'd realise that this is just a little slump and wouldn't be giving him up for anything but a first rounder.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. And perhaps just the 1 game in Paris this week, maybe that's just adding to the frustration. So last 7 days has been quite disappointing. Only 1 game this week. Maybe this is the time to strike. Let's move on. De'Aaron Fox. Now, he was on a tear. And we spoke about him last episode, Kayla, where he was just a sell high. And hopefully you're able to fulfill that and pull off that trade, because now he's a buy low. Over the last week, really disappointing. 260th in 9-cat, 79th in points leagues as well. So it's across the board that he's just been disappointing. It's not necessarily just his efficiency. We'll get to that as well. But those field goal percentages, that field goal percentage of 36.4, that's disappointing. But every other category, points, threes, rebounds, assists, steals, he's all down on that as well. And that usage has taken a hit as well. I know the Kings have looked at having Domantas Sabonis, and he's had a few monster games recently as well. So maybe that could be attributed to why De'Aaron Fox has been a little bit disappointing. The minutes have still been there. So again, there's room for improvement there. Buy low opportunity right now.
Yeah, he recorded some really disappointing offensive numbers, and that's where I think he took the most significant hits, especially with points, threes, assists. It's just not what we're used to seeing. But like we said before, this is a slump. Everybody goes through it. But he had his worst game. I think it was on Sunday, where he recorded about 3 points, which was just insane. But he'll be looking to bounce back, as will the other buy lows on this list.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the box scores now. So, yes, he did have 3 points on 1 of 10 shooting in a blowout. Lost to New Orleans, and only 2 games prior to that, he had 15 points on 22 shots in 44 minutes. So, yeah, look, this is just he was pretty hot to start the season. Now he's struggling. Again, this happens. Look at Damian Lillard. Look at it's happened to Jason Tatum plenty of times. All these elite guys, it happens. So again, it is a bit of a buy low opportunity. But if you've got him rostered, I'd just be struggling through this. Like, you just have to deal with it and hope that he comes out the other side looking more like the player that we saw during the first 2 months.
I agree. And just across the season, just looking at those 3-point numbers as well, that's a dramatic improvement across his career as well. He's just looked next level, but yeah, in the last 7 days, it just hasn't been up to standard. Now, finally, Brook Lopez. And again, we know where his value lies, and it's in blocks. Over the last week, he is 169th in 9cat, but just look at those block numbers. So across the season, 2.9. So we spoke about a lot of those blocks guys, but he's one of the elite blocks guys, but 1.5, and that's really reduced his overall value, not just from a category perspective, but even a points league perspective, Kayla.
Yeah, he had really poor performances just on both ends of the floor, and he did provide a couple of blocks over the past few games, but it's not the numbers that we're used to seeing and that managers depend on. Um, I think he'll turn it around. He's usually pretty good, pretty consistent, and it's a slump. Everybody goes through it.
Yeah, look, I'm looking at those numbers comparing the last 7 days to the season. Practically the same except for blocks. Like, even when you look at free throw percentage, it's on such low volume that it's actually not impacting you. It's not too dissimilar in 0.8 free throw attempts per game, even though it's at 66.7. It's not going to hurt you. It's just those block numbers that have really impacted his ranking. Can you?
Yeah, agreed. He's a guy like Jaren Jackson. When you rely on one low volume category like blocks or steals, it doesn't take much for your rank to fall 3-4 rounds. And as you can see, his block numbers have been halved in the last week. So that's going to drag him down considerably. This one I'm somewhat happy about because I traded for him in that same league where I got DeJounte, and I traded him away and got Chris Paul back, and so 2 days later, Chris Paul went down. So, I have to say that I'm not disappointed with this one. So,
was that a trade with Mitch Casey? Because I've seen you guys going back.
Yeah. So I got Chris Paul and Onyeka Okongwu back. And main reason was because in that league, I also have Chet and Wemby. So I don't need Lopez's blocks. I needed assists and steals. That's why I traded for DeJounte as well. So he's been terrible. And then Chris Paul's out for a month. So, it didn't help me at all.
No, I haven't done a deep dive on Brook Lopez's numbers over the last week, but just off the top of my head, is Dame Lillard. We know that he's not the greatest defender. Is Dame Lillard being out impacting? Because a guy's now not being able to blow past Damian Lillard on the defensive end and have Brook Lopez block. Is it a little bit better perimeter defending that now Dame Lillard's been away from the team? I haven't done a deep dive, but perhaps that's
it's possible.
One theory.
It's possible. Yeah, there's some. You always, when teams are struggling, the media will always jump on anything. So there's stuff going around at the moment about Lillard won't be there next season and he hasn't been a good fit. And any fantasy analyst could have told them that when you've got Malik Beasley and Damian Lillard replacing Drew Holiday on your perimeter, you're going to struggle. And surprise, surprise, they have.
Which is sort of buoyed Brook Lopez because I think a lot of people were low on him coming into this season, even after such a great season last year, and everyone put it down to age. He's going to slow down. The block numbers aren't going to be there. They have been there, and he's been tremendous across the season. But buy low opportunity right now. We're going to quickly look at the ads, and this is really going to be a nice segue into the injury list later on. But Marcus Smart is my number one ad. He's highly rostered already, so he's not going to be the most added guy over the next few days, just because he's already rostered so highly, 85% in Yahoo leagues. But if he happens to be available, you just have to roster him right now with Ja Morant out for the season.
Yeah, and I think some people did drop him too. And I was someone who thought he should be a drop way back when he was injured. But now we're back in the same situation that we were with Ja's suspension, and we all know how that turned out. So he was a reliable ad while he was in the starting lineup, and that's exactly what we're going to see right now.
Kayla, you beat me to it because I was about to say we've got receipts of you over several episodes saying Marcus Smart was a drop. But I think at the time he was injured. We knew that Ja was coming back around the same time that Marcus Smart was. So it was a speculative drop, and it was a nice, bold call. But I think he's definitely a pickup right now.
It was different circumstances, and even looking back too, if you look through a game log, at least like in points leagues, it was very inconsistent. Like at least in my league, there was some games I think where he got you under 20 fantasy points, which isn't very good.
Yeah. Well, since he's come back, he's actually been relatively disappointing.
Mhm.
Even for your expectations, I don't think he's been a top 100 player, but I think he's an ad now. He will be a top. Still will buoy his value, so I think he will be a top 100 value, particularly as Jar is out. But Vince Williams, I've got him as an ad, but he's probably more for deeper leagues. We saw what he was able to do when Jar went out last game, a little bit earlier. I think he's more of a deeper league, so maybe a 16-teamer, perhaps a 14-teamer. But I've got his name there just as a speculative ad, something to keep an eye on moving forward. TJ McConnell is also a very popular ad, and with Tyrese Halliburton going down yesterday, and it didn't look good being carried off the court. As we said, we thought the worst. It could have been season ending. It's come back as a grade 1 strain of the hamstring, which is great news. But TJ McConnell, I still think, is a very popular ad and will be very valuable while Halliburton is sidelined. Any thoughts on that? And any of the other paces as well I've got listed there. Mathurin, Nembard, and Aaron Neesmith. I think he's been must roster over the last couple of weeks. So he needs to be added if he's not already.
Just on Smart, I agreed that he probably was a drop like a month ago when he was injured and we knew Jar was coming back. I'm stubborn, so I held him because I drafted him. That was the only reason I held him, was just because I felt I backed him at the start. So I'm glad I did now. Yeah. But I think even I mentioned on a podcast that you could consider dropping him with what he was doing. And Vince Williams, I think he's worth a flyer, but we saw what he looked like. He's borderline. I think in terms of the paces, McConnell was a pretty popular ad last night. I've had people on Twitter commenting saying that other managers blew half their free agency budget to grab him. That was probably before we got word that it was only a 2 or 3 week injury. I managed to pick him up for free in 3 leagues. As soon as I saw Halliburton go down, I went and grabbed him in every league that doesn't have a budget, and didn't really drop anyone that I regret dropping. So that was fine. Mathurin, I think, has been playing really well lately since I was having a chat with Mike Fiddle, who I do a show with. We were talking about 6th man of the year odds. And based on what we've seen the last 2 weeks, I said Mathurin might be a dark horse for 6th man of the year because he's been scoring, and 6th man usually is someone that scores. Although he might not be the most valuable 6th man if they're scoring 15, 18 points a game. Think of Jamal Crawford and those guys who have won it in the past. They just score a lot of points. So Neesmith, as you said, I think he's probably must roster anyway. So if he's not rostered, I'd go and add him. And then Nembhard is probably the 4th of that bunch if you want to just have a look at him. But if you grab McConnell, enjoy it. As you said, it's a 2-week injury, but this is a hamstring. So it doesn't mean he's back playing 4 minutes in 2 weeks. It means they might be he might be reevaluated, and then maybe it's another week, and then maybe he's eased in over a few games. So this could be a month before we see Halliburton back to 100%.
Yeah, so I think in the meantime, we'll get some really nice value with McConnell as the starting point guard as well. Nembard, probably not for standard leagues for me. We've seen Halliburton sit a few games here and there over the last couple of seasons, particularly at the back end of last season as well. And it's really McConnell that really dominated with the point guard and the playmaking role. But yeah, he would be my priority from the Pacers. Mathurin, he's looked really good, and his shooting splits have been fantastic recently. I haven't got Buddy Hield there. And we've seen in the past, Buddy Hield has been more of a playmaker when Halliburton has missed. But I think that's quite diminished now. I think McConnell will be that guy, Nembard to a lesser extent as well. But a lot of people are dropping Hield, and quite rightly, I don't think he's a must roster. He's okay if you need the threes and you need the points. But for me, he doesn't have to be rostered. I don't have him on the drops list, but he's just mid for me. He's meh, okay? I don't know what your thoughts are on Buddy Hield.
Yeah, I agree with that too. He's not necessarily a drop, but over the last few games too, he's really struggled. He's someone I'm kind of just monitoring to see what happens. But like you guys were saying before, TJ, my first pick, and Mathurin would be my second, just because he's also on a really hot streak right now. And I think we discussed this early on in the season about him possibly being a drop, but now I think the tables have turned.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think I did drop Mathurin. I think in a league when he was struggling, and I think Buddy Hield just needs to be traded. I think they don't view him as a key piece for them. And just for anyone that did pick up McConnell, I wouldn't be surprised if Nembhard starts while Halliburton is out, but I still think McConnell will be the guy that we want to be adding. But I think we've seen in the past when Halliburton's been out, it's been Nembhard that has started. So, yeah, if that happens, don't go, I picked up the wrong guy. Just wait and see, because I think McConnell he only needs like 22, 24 minutes, and he can get you 8 or 9 assists and 2 steals, and that's why you picked him up.
Exactly. And even when Nembhard was out injured and McConnell was backing up Halliburton, McConnell's steals and assists were very valuable across that period as well. So he's just going to take it to another level. But yeah, those that blew a lot of their budget, they'll be a little bit disappointed this morning, but they're still going to get nice value. So it's not the worst thing in the world. And now another set of injury replacements. Cade Cunningham's going to be out for a while. We'll talk on that briefly and momentarily. But Jaden Ivey, Killian Hayes, and Alec Burks, they should be the main beneficiaries from that Cade injury.
I think it's really going to be interesting to explore how they work with this lineup now. We talk about this every week. We're fluctuating with adds and drops. For me, though, at the moment, Ivy is my number one here. What are your thoughts?
Can you?
Yeah, sorry. My daughter stumbled out of her room getting ready for work. Look, Detroit have been frustrating all season, knowing who to target. Alec Burks, we know exactly who he is. He's just a points guy off the bench. He'll be really hot and cold. I got asked this exact question. I think what would be the order that we'd be adding people in Detroit? Ivy, Hayes,
Any final
Burks,
thoughts?
and there was a fourth player.
Honestly, for me, it's just to keep an eye on the Raptors right now and the Knicks too. See how that trade plays out. I think it's going to be really well for Quickly and Barrett. So those are my two players.
Actually, maybe it's in our question.
How about you?
In our mailbag.
Yeah,
I think it is.
Love
Yeah.
So I want to see how he
I'd probably
performs in
have
the next game against the
Ivy
Bulls.
first.
I would like for him to push up towards
Burks
30
maybe
minutes.
at the
and we can
moment,
see if
Burks,
that's
but in a
gonna
week
be,
it might not be Burks.
Possible for the rest of the
And
season. But
then
yeah, I've
Sasser
got
would be
high
at the
hopes for
bottom,
him.
and
But
then
let's
you
wait and
just
see.
throw Hayes
For
somewhere
sure.
in
All
there.
right.
But I think Ivy makes
Final
sense.
words in terms of
as
following
the
us on
priority.
Twitter or X. I
If he's
should say.
available, he
Yes,
probably
I keep
has
forgetting
been
that it's
picked up
X
in the
now.
most competitive.
Yeah, you can
leagues,
find
so
me at
he's there.
Kayla_Fonte.
Ivy would be my priority.
Yep, and you can find me at
I'm actually
NBA
surprised there's only
Fantasy Bible.
51% rostered in
We have
Yahoo,
a
but we know
few,
that there's a lot of
ideas coming, new
dormant
shows,
leagues in
we'll be
Yahoo as
appearing
well.
on a
But
few other shows
if
as
he's
well, which is
available,
very
he would be
exciting.
my priority
But
ad.
yeah, give us a
Killian
like.
Hayes, I actually
Please
added
subscribe
him
to us and
in
follow us on
every
Twitter.
single
But
league of mine.
thank you very
And
much,
we'll see how
Kayla,
that
and
plays
until
out.
next
I'm
time,
not super confident on
thank
that
you very
one,
much.
Thank
but
you.
it is tough to
See you
find
guys.
assists and nice point guard stats off the wire. So I have added him there. But let's see how that plays out. Alec Burks, yeah, we know what he is. He's the probably more efficient version of Cam Thomas, and we'll speak about Cam Thomas in our drops segment next. But yeah, he will have some value as well while Cade is out, and hopefully that's not too long. Nick Richards, we've spoken about him probably the last 2, 3, 4 episodes, Kayla, ever since Mark Williams has been down. He's been a nice direct replacement. He's been solid. He's been very solid. He's had games where he's very quiet and then he gets dropped, which is surprising because he's got a nice role as well. And no one's taken that role off him while Mark Williams is sidelined. And Mark Williams, we do finally have a timeline on him. So it's just going to be a bit of a wait and see. But for now, Nick Richards does have to be rostered.
Yeah, as long as he's seeing those minutes, he's definitely worth an ad. And like you said, there's a couple of quiet games here and there, but as long as he's receiving that extra opportunity, he's worth it. He'll reward you most of the time too. And especially, we don't really know exactly when Mark Williams will return. We do have a bit of a timeline. I think it was about a week, but I wouldn't be surprised if it extends beyond that.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, I added Richards in a league and I haven't considered dropping him. He's doing what you need. He gets in foul trouble sometimes, which limits him, or the matchup might limit him a bit, but he's usually getting you close to a double-double. He's efficient. He gets some blocks. So you're not going to find that on the waiver wire. So I think if he is, I'm surprised he's only rostered in 35% of leagues because this isn't a recent injury to Mark Williams. This is something that happened a month ago. So.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. Next one, San Antonio Spurs, Trey Jones. He's taken the starting point guard role back, which is nice. It just wasn't working with Jeremy Sohan. I know Pop's put a lot of time into Sohan at the point, but I think particularly Wemby, needs a traditional point guard. And Trey Jones isn't the point guard of the future for the Spurs, but he's the point guard of the now. And he's at least going to be able to provide some nice open looks for guys as well. So I think Trey Jones, now that he's starting, he has to be rostered. What do you think?
I think so too. He's been recording some solid stat lines too. I think he was inserted into the starting lineup about 2 games ago, and so far he's been pretty good, even in points leagues too. I think he's a guy who can give you about 30 fantasy points a night, depending on your settings. But as long as he remains in that role, I think he's a solid add.
Yeah.
Kingy. Yeah, he makes sense as the starter. The worry, obviously, is that the Spurs don't care about common sense, because they don't want to win. As long as he's starting, you roster him. I think the Sohan thing is done, but when Malachi Branham comes back, maybe he moves back in as the starter. And I actually think Sohan has looked better since they moved him out of the point guard role. So that says a lot. So Jones, roster him, hold him, just see what the Spurs end up doing. Whether he has rest of season value, I don't know. But right now, he's worth grabbing.
Agreed. Now, next 2 Warriors, Brandon Podziemski and Jonathan Kuminga, I think they need to be added. And now that CP3's gone out as well, and he'll be out for a few weeks, I think Podziemski is a must add. If he was dropped, he had a couple of quieter games. I think he has to be held or at least added as well. Andrew Wiggins, your boy Kayla, I know you spoke about being a drop probably from week 1, which is at the time I thought that was very aggressive, and I know that you named your team after him. But I think he was an obvious drop. But Podziemski and Kuminga, I think they should still be held.
Yeah, as long as they're receiving the minutes, I think so too. Especially with Kuminga too. It's a very interesting situation, as we all know from the reports about Steve Kerr and everything like that. But it seems like he's committed to giving Kuminga that opportunity for now, especially with the rookie too. Very promising. And he has more long-term value, I think, especially with Chris Paul out. We all know that Draymond Green is going to be returning probably pretty soon, maybe a couple games. But yeah, 2 very solid ads. Andrew Wiggins is not an ad.
Now, I omitted Trace Jackson-Davis from this list just because you mentioned Draymond Green's return, and he was on our ads list last week, but not this week, just because, look, he'll have some nice value, and he's looked quite good. I know he got towed up. I believe it was against Nikola Jokic, so there's that's no mean feat going up against him. But he's still been solid, but I haven't got him as an ad just because with some foresight, I think that Draymond will take a lot of the usage and the playing time away from Trace Jackson-Davis. So he's not an ad for me right now, but he'll be okay as a short-term streamer. But yeah, these 2 I think need to be added, particularly with CP3 out.
Yep, I agree.
Next.
Podziemski, I've rostered him, held him. Kuminga, let's see what happens when Draymond comes back. But for now, both should be rostered. Yeah,
and Kuminga's coming up in a lot of trade rumors as well. With Siakam, I think people are getting onto the trade machine and saying, how do we make this work? And I think Kuminga, he doesn't have the salary, obviously, to match it, but he'll be one of the part pieces if the Warriors were trying to trade for someone like Pascal Siakam. But yeah, let's see how it plays out. I think he definitely needs the minutes, and the potential is there, but we've been saying that for a couple of seasons now. High draft pick, but Moses Moody, definitely not a pickup in standard leagues, but again, someone that probably needs a trade to be able to fulfill some of their potential. Next one is a very short-term stream. Job Reith, the Aussie. We knew about him. The first I knew about him was in the lead up to the World Cup. So I'll be honest, that was the first time I saw him play, but he looked really good as the starting center for the Boomers, and he's carried that over. Now, DeAndre Ayton's out. He shouldn't be out for too much longer, but Diop Reith has looked really solid in his absence.
Yeah, and I don't think that Aiden has a clear return date yet. I think he's kind of in a Mark Williams situation right now where he keeps receiving those doubtful tags. But rumors are that they're very optimistic that he'll be back soon. So yeah, he's definitely more of a short-term option, but Portland's been running with Reith at center, and he's been actually really solid, especially in points leagues.
Yeah, and Portland actually have a very good schedule this week. They play tonight, or Tuesday night, Thursday night, Saturday and Sunday. So 3 of those are low volume nights. So if grab Reith and just see when Ayton comes back. He probably loses basically all of his value, but I could do a whole podcast about Ayton and why I don't like him. So yeah, I've got no issues picking up Reith and just holding him until we get word on if and when Ayton will be coming back.
Yeah, I only had Ayton in one spot, and I traded him out when his value was probably at peak level several weeks ago, and I'm glad I did that. It was a multiplayer trade where I traded 3 of my guys to get Karl Anthony Towns. So I was pretty happy with that. 3 guys that 2 of those 3 probably drops. Well, I won't say drops, but one was John Collins. He was performing well. He's probably not necessarily a must-hold. Another is DeAndre Ayton. And the other was Jalen Williams. I was hesitant to give him up, particularly in the keeper league. But to get someone like Kat, who I've now flipped several times since then. But I think that was a nice trade for me, particularly with Ayton performing so poorly recently. Now, moving forward, we spoke about Toronto and Jakob Poeltl being out. It's probably going to be a few games. So Chris Boucher could potentially come in and get some centre minutes. We knew, 2-3 seasons ago, he was a bit of a fantasy darling. He's really dropped off since those days. There's talk that they could go to a small ball lineup, as Kingy alluded to as well. So someone like a Gary Trent or a Dennis Schroeder may actually be reaping the benefits. But Chris Boucher is just someone to keep an eye on, just because we know he can be a per-minute monster. He doesn't need that many minutes to be very valuable. He can get you those threes, he can get you those blocks as well. So he can be just someone to keep an eye out for, Chris Boucher.
He's played really well over the past few games too, and that's when he was coming off the bench. But I think ultimately we're going to have to monitor the Raptors situation to see what kind of lineup they decide to go with.
Yeah, I think he's certainly going to play more. We just don't know how much that is, and we do know. I mean, he's got a fantasy-friendly game. So if you want to just take a flyer on him and grab him and plug him in, and let's see what that role looks like, because we've got at least 2 weeks here without Poeltl. So grab him, see what happens, and if he maintains only 18 minutes and he's potentially not doing enough, then you just drop him and move on. Otherwise, you might get lucky and he puts up top 60 value for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, speaking of flyer, Caleb Houston, we spoke about Franz Wagner being out, and Caleb Houston looked really nice, really good scoring. I think he hit 7 threes, which is fantastic in the last game. He's more for deeper leagues for me, but just someone to keep an eye on. I think that'll be a short-term add if you do decide to add him. So we won't speak too much on Caleb Houston. Kevin Love has actually been quite impressive the last few games, and some of that could be attributed to Jimmy Butler being out of the lineup as well, and just more minutes being able to be afforded to these bench guys. But he's looked very solid.
Yeah, he's surprisingly really stepped up for the Heat as of late, and he's provided some solid production in all the primary categories, but he's also giving you some threes and stocks too. But there's no telling how long that will be able to be maintained for.
Yeah, and stocks is quite unusual for him. We know that he's formerly one of the elite rebounders of the league, hitting those threes as well in his heyday with the Cavs. But yeah, he's looking really solid. I think he's definitely an add at this stage. Kingy.
Yeah, rebounds, threes, some defensive stuff. Yeah, I mean, Jimmy Butler, who knows when he's going to come back and how long he's going to come back for. So they're never going to push Love. They know that he can't play 30 minutes. So no matter who's in or out, he's going to play a similar role in terms of minutes. It's who he's sharing the court with. And at the moment, he's sort of higher in that pecking order when he's on the court. So, I wouldn't worry too much about his health or anything like that, because he seems to have settled nicely into his role. So, yeah, grab him and just ride it out until Butler's back and they get healthy.
Yeah. The next two, we spoke about the one game for the Cleveland Cavs and the Brooklyn Nets. So Karis LeVert, we spoke about him being an ad when Darius Garland went out. I still think he's an ad, but he was a tough hold this week, and a lot of people did decide to hold on, and which is quite right, because he's looked quite good since Darius Garland has been out of the lineup. One game is a tough one, but I think he's still an ad or at least a hold.
I think so too, and we all know that he has issues with consistency and his efficiency, but he's still one of the more reliable Cavaliers to stream.
The 1 game week is tough for both of these guys. But yeah, I mean, I'm hoping, because I've got him rostered, I'm hoping Garland is back potentially next week or maybe 2 weeks. And obviously then LeVert's probably a drop, but if you can afford to hold him through a 1-game week, then he's probably still going to have value beyond this week. And Dennis Smith, I picked him up in a couple of leagues, and I'm going to do my best to hold him this week because he's looked better than Spencer Dinwiddie. He closed in their last game. Doesn't score a lot, but he gets assists. He gets blocks from the guard position. He gets steals. Not a big 3-point guy, but I just think he gives the Nets a different look and something that they seem to be leaning a little bit more into. Obviously, if Ben Simmons ever resurfaces, we probably change our opinion. But in saying that, who knows? Ben Simmons might never come back.
Yeah. And that was something I was going to raise as well. But yeah, the Nets love what Dennis Smith provides. He closed in that overtime game in the last one. He was trending up before that anyway. But if you can afford to either pick him up now or wait and quickly pounce on him when it comes to the game in Paris, I think he's a nice out. And then moving forward, let's see how it plays out with Spencer Dinwiddie's role, Ben Simmons hopefully coming back, even from an Aussie perspective. He's not my favorite guy, but it would be nice to see him just get a bit of a stretch where he's not injured. But yeah, let's see how it plays out. But I think he's definitely one. So Dennis Smith, definitely one to keep an eye out for. Yeah, let's looking at our drops. So Ja Morant's already reduced in rostership very, very quickly after the season-ending injury. So we won't spend too much on that. But yeah, very disappointing for those that had Ja. We had to wait a third of the season to get him back. Came back, he looked really nice. I had him in actually the FBI League, the World Cup. So I waited all those weeks, had him come back. I was doing really well. I'm still doing okay. I think we're in the first week of playoffs. King, you correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, maybe my team sucks in that league. So that's the one league I'm not really paying attention to because, I got injuries and I haven't been competitive really for most of the season.
Yeah, but disappointing for those that have Ja or had Ja on their roster. But yeah, time to drop him. Cam Thomas, I spoke about him earlier. Just he's the less efficient Alec Burks. He gets more minutes. He gets apparently more opportunity. Brooklyn people, supposedly, if you look at Brooklyn Nets Twitter, people love him. And I remember, and Kayla, we spoke about this, having Twitter arguments, and I won't say arguments, we'll say robust discussions around his value coming back after injury. Oh, he's still going to be a top 30 guy. There's no chance, absolutely no chance. And that's proven to be right. So I think he's a drop, guys.
I agree with that too. And I even said this in our last episode too, but he's very one-dimensional. He's going to give you points, a couple of threes, and every so often he'll give you a couple of other stats too. But outside of scoring, there's not much. And if anything, he's going to give you a little bit more value in points leagues over categories.
Yeah, I was just going to say that coming from a points league extraordinaire is, highly weighted because if he's not providing value in a points league, then I don't think he's going to give you much more in a category league. Can you?
Yeah, no, he's. And I've got to head out in 5 minutes just so you guys know. I'm going to take my daughter to work.
No problems.
Yeah, look, I picked up Cam Thomas. He scored 9 points in 17 minutes. I dropped him and picked up TJ McConnell. So, yeah, you if you want to stream him in on the off chance you catch him on a hot night where he's hitting his shots, then go ahead. But in terms of sustainable value, I think we've seen that he does not have that at this stage.
Yeah. Now we'll fly through these drops as well, just with Kingy about to leave us. But Patrick Williams, I don't think he's a must roster. Now they've got their full complement of team back. I think he's looked disappointing since Levine and Vooch has come back, so I don't think he needs to be rostered. Wendell Carter Jr., it's the three-headed monster at the Magic with the center role. You've got Goga Badadze, you've got Mo Wagner. It has helped someone like Goga and Wagner, also with Jonathan Isaac being out. Wendell Carter Jr. has been out and in and out of the lineup since his return. But I don't think you have to hold on to Wendell.
I dropped him. He's gone.
Yeah, he's only playing 20 minutes a night off the bench. So, drop him. Maybe that changes in a month, but at the moment, there's no point holding him.
Yeah. Next one's a bit controversial for Kingy, but I think Markelle Fultz is a drop. If you can't stash him in an IR like Kingy has, I think he's a burn of a roster spot just because he's not going to give you the production that you want right now. It's going to take him some time. I expect some rest days as well. So I don't think he needs to be rostered right now in a daily changes league.
Yeah, the biggest things for me is there's a crowded backcourt in Orlando. There's the injury concerns, and then you're going to have those minutes restrictions too.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, like I said, I'm high on Fultz, but I totally see dropping him if you need to. As I said, I'm pretty stubborn when it comes to these guys that I've sort of jumped on to begin the season, like him and Marcus Smart. So I will hold him wherever I can, but yeah, it's going to be a ramp up, and as you said, it's crowded there, so it's there's no clear path to minutes.
Yep. Now, the next three don't need too much more discussion. Simone Fontecchio, he was a nice ad when he was hot. Now he's not hot. I think he's a drop. Kevin Herter, I think he's been on this list, Kayla, probably for the last 2 months. He's not a guy that you need to hold on to. He looked okay for the Kings in the last game, but you just don't need to hold on to that in a standard league. Same goes for Harrison Barnes. So no need to discuss those ones. Just drop them if you have them. Bobby Portis, now highly rostered, 69%. Bobby Portis, just he's been okay. He just hasn't been great. What do you think, guys?
He's in a really rough slump right now, too. Very minimal contributions with his points and rebounds. I think he'll probably have that roster percentage go up even higher once he starts doing well again, but he's a very streaky player.
I agree. Portis, I've been saying he's a drop for weeks now. Just on Kevin Herter, he is a drop, but it is sounding like he might start in the next game. So just keep an eye on, because it's Chris Duarte. He does nothing. Malik Monk, they don't want to start Malik Monk, and I get that. So maybe Herter can have a week or two where he moves back into the starting lineup and starts hitting his shots. So I wouldn't be running to grab him, but someone just to monitor, I think.
You mentioned Chris Duarte. It just makes me think of a Twitter robust discussion I had 2 years ago about Chris Duarte versus Alperen Sengun about who's the better prospect, and they were adamant it was Duarte. He's the guy for the Pacers, but yeah, that hasn't turned out to be quite correct. And I think it was Josh Lloyd that said Duarte could be Sengun's dad because he was quite an old recruit. But anyway, I digress. Quickly go into a couple of Hornets, Brandon Miller and PJ Washington. I think their drops, even with LaMelo out, it should have opened up some opportunity for Brandon Miller. He just hasn't really taken it with both hands. And PJ Washington is injured at the moment. He may be back in the next one. But again, since Miles Bridges has returned, PJ Washington just hasn't looked like PJ Washington. So I don't think he needs to be rostered, guys.
Yep, you said it exactly.
I agree. LaMelo could be back this week, and Washington is doubtful for tomorrow. They play tomorrow? Yeah, tomorrow. He's doubtful. So I saw him dropped in a league, and I considered picking him up just because he fits what I need. But if he's injured, I'm not going to bother.
Yeah. Next one, Asar Thompson. Again, I've just got him from previous weeks. We knew what he could do earlier in the season. He's just not given the playing time, the opportunity. Just someone to look out for when it comes to the silly season, the back end of the season. I think he'll be a pickup then, but for now, I don't think he needs to be rostered. Russell Westbrook, he's providing you some okay numbers, particularly for points leagues. So I don't think he has to be rostered, though. Of course, he's not going to give you the efficiency that you want. It's not the Russ of yesteryear where he was able to provide you at least with the triple doubles, but I don't think he needs to be rostered alongside of the triple threat, PG, Harden, and Kawhi.
Yeah, I think he holds a little bit more value in points leagues, like you mentioned, but he's very inconsistent. It's very up and down. In most standard leagues, I think that he could be dropped, but he probably is worth holding on to in a very deep league.
Yeah, he's just a stream guy for me. Like you stream him in for some assists or some rebounds, but he's not playing enough to be rostered permanently.
Yeah. And he's a nice stream if one of the big three are sitting that game as well. Next one, I've just put him there, just paying homage to Kayla as well. So Andrew Wiggins, he should have been dropped weeks and weeks and weeks ago. I don't know why he's still rostered in 54% of leagues. Moving on, I've got some speculative drops, not necessarily must drops, but guys that you don't need to roster. John Collins, we spoke about, he's not getting the playing time. In the last couple of games, it looks from the box score, it looks like he's had a solid game, but you look at the playing time, it's in the low to mid 20 minutes. And he's just shot the ball well, which is helpful. But I don't think with that playing time and just there's a pretty crowded front court in Utah, I don't think he needs to be held, but something to monitor. Another one on... Yeah, go on,
quick
Kayla.
thing. I think in points leagues, he is a hold, and instead of dropping, I would rather use him as a trade chip.
All right.
Yep.
Kingy.
Agree. Yep.
Yeah. Andre Drummond, again, I've got a big question mark next to him. I just think that he's not going to be able to provide those same minutes with Vooch back. happened across the last couple of games where he's still providing value. But I think as we move forward, I think Vooch will get more playing time, and that'll diminish Andre Drummond's role for the Bulls. Agreed?
I do think he's a hold until Vooch is fully healthy, just because they're splitting the minutes right now. But once he's back to that bench role, drop him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he'll be a rebound streamer. That's because he can get 12 rebounds in 8 minutes, kind of thing. But he's in terms of sustainable again. Once Vooch is fully healthy, there's probably not enough there for him to be rostered.
Yeah. And the final one, I put Tari Eason there just because I did drop him. I couldn't keep burning that roster spot, and he's playing a bench role for the Houston Rockets as well. But when he was playing, he's providing really nice value as well, giving you those steals, elite steals, good rebounds. If he's injured and coming off the bench, Dylan Brooks will be coming back as well. I think he doesn't have to be rostered. If you can hold and you're in a nice position in terms of your overall standings in your league, you could hold him, but I don't think he needs to be a must roster player.
Yeah, I think you can drop him too, and you won't really have to worry about a lot of people rushing to grab him off the waivers. So he probably should still be there once he's healthy.
Yeah, agreed. I've told people to drop him. Houston are a good team this year, so they're not in a position to just roll him out big minutes. He has a spot in the rotation, and they have guys ahead of him at the moment. So, yeah, he's not playing 30 minutes a night, so I think you can drop him.
Yeah, and I think they probably won't rush him to play every single game as well. He'll probably sit some back-to-backs. Cam Whitmore's looked quite nice in limited minutes. I mean, Thompson's playing a little bit more as well. So, yeah, like you said, Kingy, some nice depth on that Houston Rockets team now. I know that Kingy has to hop out shortly, but I just wanted to quickly highlight some of the key injuries very quickly. We spoke about Ja Morant out for the season. Tyrese Halliburton will be reevaluated in 2 weeks. Again, that doesn't mean he's necessarily back in 2 weeks, but something to monitor. TJ McConnell obviously is the big winner there, but it'll be a slow ramp up. But good news overnight, grade 1 hamstring strain only. Cade Cunningham again, we spoke about him. So hopefully that's a short-term absence, 1 to 2 weeks with him. We spoke about those injury replacements. Chris Paul, sorry, Kingy, I know he was your new guy in your team, but fractured hand. Looking like maybe a 3 to 4 week absence for him. Jakob again, we spoke about, but perhaps 2 to 3 weeks. Reevaluated in 2. I would say at least another week after that with his ankle sprain. And similarly, we got some news overnight of Day'Ron Sharpe. Now, he's not for everyone in standard leagues, but he was providing some nice backup minutes behind Nick Claxton. But with a knee sprain, 2 to 3 weeks, reevaluated in 2, probably back in 3 weeks. So, yeah, he's an immediate drop as well. But we said
I am just going to head out, guys.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much, Kingy. Thank you for
having me.
Thanks for coming on.
Please stop by anytime.
I'll let you guys finish off the injuries. Hopefully we covered most of it, and I talked too much probably, but yeah, it was fun. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was great to have you.
We'd love to have you back on. Yeah, and please come back and talk some more as well. We love the basketball talk. It's just always interesting to listen to someone as esteemed as yourself. But thank you very much, and have a great day, Kingy, and we'll catch you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. See you later.
Okay, bye.
Catch you, mate. Now, Kayla, we'll carry on. So, LaMelo Ball, we're hoping he'll come back in about a week's time, maybe even less. So let's keep an eye on that. Obviously, that has repercussions with the rest of the Hornets lineup. Same goes for Mark Williams. We spoke about Nick Richards being a must roster guy while Mark Williams is sidelined. Hopefully, that's short term as well. But hopefully only about a week, but that could extend out just because it is a losing season for the Hornets, and they may not want to play this guy heavy minutes moving forward.
Yeah, they're definitely in no rush. So,
yeah. Same goes for Gordon Hayward. He's kind of in some trade talks as well, but calf strain, he's an old guy, 1 to 2 weeks. I'm thinking maybe even longer. I don't think they'll rush to bring him back, but if he's available and it's said that he is returning, I think he's probably worth an add, but for now, he doesn't need to be added with his calf strain. We spoke about DeAndre Ayton at the Trailblazers. Knee tendonitis. He's day-to-day. I don't expect him to play in the next one, which, boys, drop Reith's value. But I would expect him to come back shortly. But again, with a losing season in Portland, I don't think they're just really going to rush him, to be honest. Moving forward, DeAndre Ayton, he's still on this list, but hopefully he comes back soon, and that'll eat into Sadiq Bey's playing time. I Don't think it impacts Jalen Johnson, our boy Jalen Johnson's role at all, but just something to monitor as well. And he's probably more for deeper leagues, 14 teamers, and the occasional 12-team stream. Jimmy Butler, now, we didn't put him on the disappointments list just because he hasn't played, but he's just been disappointing for the fact that he hasn't played. He was drafted quite high, probably around that 20 to 30 mark, and he's not providing the per game value that you wanted, nor is he providing the total value that you wanted as well, just with those missed games. But yeah, with his sprained joint in his toe, probably another, hopefully comes back within the week, but let's keep an eye on that one. Like we said, that his absence has been able to provide some value for some of those other guys like Kevin Love, and retaining some value for Jaime Jaquez, Duncan Robinson to a lesser extent as well. But yeah, let's keep an eye on that one. We spoke about Dylan Brooks. Hopefully he comes back soon with the oblique strain, but yeah, probably about another week away. But like we said, Houston is deep, so he doesn't necessarily need to be rostered in a 12-teamer. Franz Wagner, he definitely needs to be rostered in a 12-teamer. Obviously, he's had quite the season to date, but yeah, ankle injury, probably about a week away. So yeah, keep rolling. Paolo Banchero is just going to be awesome in that in the meantime. So yeah, keep rolling with those guys. Darius Garland, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks away with a jaw injury. But yeah, as we said, Karis LeVert would probably be a drop once Garland does return. Ben Simmons, again, we just don't really know, just based on the original projection of timeline for his absence with his back nerve impingement, hopefully around 2 weeks. But again, that could extend out for much, much longer. So yeah, like we said, keep an eye out for Dennis Smith Jr. Zach Collins with his ankle injury, another 3 weeks away. So Wemby will continue starting at center when he doesn't miss on one of the games in a back-to-back. There's no one really stood out as the backup center either in Zach Collins' absence, and when Wemby does sit those back-to-back. So no one really to add in Zach Collins' absence. Evan Mobley we spoke about, probably another 6 weeks away. But yeah, like we said, tried to sell high on Jarrett Allen. And finally, he's not injured, but he's been out suspended for quite some time. But Draymond Green, don't really know exactly when he's going to return. But what do you think, Kayla? About a week? Are we about a week away, or is that just too? We just don't know.
I don't know. I thought I saw somewhere, like it was probably a rumor or something, that he was going to return. I think it was over the weekend.
Right.
But I think it's going to be sometime this week, early next week at the latest, hopefully.
Okay, yeah. And as we said earlier, Trace Jackson Davis, that'll eat into his time, which I think will mean he loses all 12-team value. So he will be a drop once Draymond Green does return. But hold for now, and we'll see what happens there. Week 12 schedule, we're coming into day 2 of week 12. So Kayla, I don't know if you wanted to quickly discuss this. And the next slide, we'll go through the back-to-backs as well.
Yeah, for the sake of time, I'll go through it really quickly. But the key takeaway here is that for 2 games, only the Philadelphia 76ers are in that boat. And then 1 game, and we mentioned this before, the Paris game, and that would be between Cleveland and Brooklyn. But the rest of the team has 3 to 4 games, so a heavy workload there. And then we'll go on to the back-to-backs. There's a couple of note this week, but for the sake of time, I won't go through them all. But you could pause the video here and take a look. And I guess we'll move on to the mailbag segment.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight, we've got that image of Wemby there. I would expect that he does sit out one of those back-to-backs on the Friday, Saturday. That's as expected. You want to look after your franchise corner piece. I do have him in one of my leagues, my big money league as well. So we just need to expect it. And for the longevity of his career, I think it's probably the right move. Now, our favorite segment, the mailbag section. So these are just some questions that I've been asked on Twitter, and we thought we'd answer them quickly here. So this is in response to Halliburton's injury. So the question is Nembhard, so Andrew Nembhard, is he a choice now or only TJ? So we spoke about this earlier. TJ is the priority pickup just for the time that Halliburton will be missing. So minimum 2 weeks, probably 3 to 4 more likely, plus the ramp up. So TJ McConnell is the guy to have. I think Nembhard will have some value. As Kingy alluded to, he probably will start and he'll have a little bit of value. I just don't think he necessarily is a standard league guy. What do you think?
Yeah, for me, TJ is the number 1 choice. And I kind of want to see how the lineup and his production kind of plays out before I consider adding anyone else outside of TJ.
Yep. The second part of his question, is Chris Boucher worth streaming with Pertwell? I think he's worth monitoring and streaming, yes. while Pedal was out. But let's see how that rotation plays out. I think they will go to small ball. I don't think they necessarily trust Chris Boucher. And this is going back to Nick Nurse days as well. But I don't think he's necessarily going to start. I hope he does, because we know that he, as I said, he could be a fantasy darling with those minutes. But I think they'll go to small ball with Pascal Siakam playing at the 5. Even Scotty Barnes is so flexible. He could probably even play at the 5, to be honest, and defend a point guard. He's just that type of guy. But I'd expect someone like a Dennis Schroeder or even Gary Trent Jr. to get some value while Jakob Poeltl's out. What are your thoughts as a Toronto native?
Yeah, I agree with you there. I feel like, well, the lineup is always very unpredictable, especially with the Raptors. But even then, Boucher is still going to receive an increase in minutes. And while he's not my number one streamer option, he's someone that I would definitely consider, probably more so in a deeper league.
Yeah, agreed. Next question, Vince Williams. So this is Memphis in relation to Ja Morant's injury. Is Vince Williams an ad over, say, a Caruso in a points league? I'm going to hand it over to you as our points league extraordinaire.
Yeah, this was a little bit tricky. It also depends on the size of your league, but I'm a little bit concerned about Caruso's production, especially with the return of Levine. I think that the Grizzlies are going to give Vince Williams a shot in their starting lineup for the foreseeable future, and if that's the case, I would probably prefer Vince over Caruso.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you for a points league. If it was a category league, I'd go the other way. I'd go Caruso just because of the value of his steals. Even in limited time, I think he would be more valuable. He's typically an injury waiting to happen. So in a category league, Caruso. In a points league, Vince Williams. And it'll just be interesting to see how the young guy goes now that Ja Morant's sidelined. So thanks to Alex for that question. Next one. So this is in response to my, and we spoke about this earlier with Kingy, but with Cade being out, what order would you have these guys? So Killian Hayes, Jaden Ivey, or Alec Burks? So Ragnar has asked in what order? So I think the order in which we spoke about earlier, I think Jaden Ivey is the priority. I think Kingy said Alec Burks, then Killian Hayes. I'd probably have it the other way around. But again, if it's a category league, it may depend on what categories you need. If you need assists and steals, you'd go Killian Hayes. If you need points, you go Alec Burks. But from a points perspective, give us your thoughts, Kayla.
So, of course, the consensus, Ivy is definitely number one. And actually, originally, I agreed with you where I said Hayes above Burks. But Hayes has just been so horrible lately that I'm kind of starting to change my mind a little bit. But I kind of want to hold off until I kind of see what experiment the lineup turns out to be. But if I had to say an answer right now, I'd probably say Burks and then Hayes.
Yep. Okay. Well, let's see how it plays out. Just a few hours until game time as well. So let's see how that plays out. But yeah, I've picked up Killian Hayes everywhere just in the hope that he does provide that point guard value moving forward. Cowboy has asked, do we pick up Sasser? So this is Marcus Sasser of Detroit Pistons and drop Champagny in a 20-team Roto League. This is a tough one because I don't know how much run Sasser will get. Champagny has been starting for the Spurs as well, but he hasn't been providing a great deal of value. So I don't mind taking a bit of a flyer on Sasser, but again, we know that that's shorter term because Cade Cunningham's not going to be out longer term. But in a 20-team Roto, these are the types of moves that you need to consider. It's a tough one for me. Champagny or Sasser, it may actually, again, come down to how it plays out today with the Detroit rotation. If Detroit don't like what they see with Killian Hayes, maybe Sasser plays a lot more minutes. So that's a tough one for me. I'm leaning on the fence. Look, I'm probably going to stick with Champagny because he's got that starting role. He's more solidified in his role, and that's probably a longer-term thing. I did say Sasser as a flyer, but the flyer may have to be taken after we see how it plays out after today's game. What do you think? So this is 20-team Roto.
This is 20-team is crazy. Yeah. First off, but like you said, I'm on the fence too. Like it's a very hard question, especially with that size of a league. I'm probably taking a little bit of a gamble here, but I'm going to say Sasser, actually. I could see him receiving some pretty decent minutes, and we've even seen before. He's been pretty solid with an increased workload. So, yeah, Sasser's my pick.
All right. Last couple of questions, and then we'll call it a day. From Drew, I know that he's very active on Twitter. He's asked, should I pick up John Collins in a 10-team 9-cat league? He just got dropped to waivers. I actually did respond to him. One person responded and said, yes, absolutely. I based on what we said earlier, where he's not necessarily a must roster player in 12s, based on that thinking, he's not a must roster player, and he's actually probably a drop or not even a pickup in a 10-team 9-cat league, just based on the amount of time that he's playing in Utah. I don't think he has to be rostered in a 10-teamer.
See, for me, I would agree with you, but I think it also depends on a couple of factors. So the first would be what categories are you trying to get? And the other thing is what other options are available on the waiver wire. But I think that if he's the best possible player and you need a boost in points and rebounds, I would say yes, but he's not someone that you absolutely have to roster.
Yeah, good call. Next one. Do we drop Portis for Smith in points league? I had to follow up with which Smith. I had
There's a
assumed it's not
couple.
Jabari Smith. Jalen Smith, Nick Smith, Dennis, or Ish Smith, who has been providing a little bit of value recently. He's clarified it's Jalen Smith of the Indiana Pacers. So he's got a starting role for the Pacers at power forward alongside of Miles Turner. But would you drop Portis in a points league for Jalen Smith?
In a heartbeat.
Would you?
Yeah,
Wow,
I
good
would.
call.
Well, Portis is going through that slump right now. We all know, like I
Mm.
said before, he's kind of streaky. He'll probably do a little bit better in a couple of weeks or so, but Smith has just been more consistent right now
Yeah.
over the past few weeks too. And while his numbers aren't really eye-popping, he still provides enough value in multiple categories that it adds up in a points league.
Yeah, nice one. Good call. Thank you for that answer, Kayla. Coming to the end here, a question. He's got Jaime Jaquez, but he wants to drop, or he's thinking about dropping to pick up Goga. Is it a good idea? He's got Jimmy Butler in IR. I'd responded to this one, but would love to get your thoughts.
I think this is a really tricky one. He didn't clarify what league this was, right?
He didn't clarify, which makes it a little bit tricky. But in terms of a category league, I said I would probably prefer to hold Jaime Jaquez. And once Jimmy does come back, I think that eats into Jaime Jaquez's value. He's borderline 12-team value in a category league. Goga, we know when he gets the minutes and the starting role, I think he's got a lot of good value. With that three-headed monster at center, I think longer term, it's probably going to be Jaime that retains more value. But again, neither of them necessarily have to be a must roster in standard 12-teamers. But for points leagues, what do you think?
For points leagues right now, I would prefer Goga. I
Right.
feel like he's going to probably be in the starting lineup for a while. We don't really know when Wendell Carter Jr. is going to return exactly. But yeah, I think Goga. But Jaime, he's a good ad as well. It's a very tough decision here.
Yeah. Well, the fact that he's got Jimmy in IR, that's why I'm thinking Jaime for now. And then as soon as Jimmy comes back, he's going to have to drop someone anyway. And that would probably be Jaime. Yeah, look, it's a tough one with Goga because we know that he can produce in those minutes. It's just whether or not he gets those minutes with the three centers coming back, plus Jonathan Isaac coming back with some front court minutes as well. So a bit to play out there. I would probably lean towards Jaime, but it's one of those borderline ones. Matthew Gross, he's asked, I just got offered LaMelo and McCall Bridges for Lauri Markkanen in a 12-team points league. Do I take this trade? Kayla?
So a couple things to consider here. So you're definitely going to be getting a boost in points overall. But the thing is, Mikal has really been struggling this season, and there's been a couple of games where he's just been horrendous. But then there's also been a couple of games where he's been amazing. With LaMelo too, he had a bit of a slow start to the season. He was picking up before he suffered that injury. And I still have a lot of concerns about the lingering impacts of that injury too, which makes me very hesitant to take this trade. And I would rather keep Lauri, to be honest with you. I think it's too big of a risk.
Yeah, so I went the other way. I went LaMelo and McCall just because I know that the other manager that has offered him this trade is trying to mitigate any risk by selling off LaMelo. I get it, but McCall, yes, he's not averaging as much as Lauri right now, but there's room for improvement there. We have said that he has been a buy low in the last couple of episodes prior to today. And then on top of that, you've got LaMelo. So typically in a trade, I would say take the better player. The better player per game is LaMelo, but it's just that risk of the nagging ankle issues across his career, to be honest. But I'm just going to shoot for the fences and go LaMelo and McCall for Lauri. I'm going to take LaMelo and McCall side. But yeah, it's interesting that you're probably going to mitigate risk and take the Lauri side. So I can see both sides of that argument.
Yeah, it's hard. Usually I like to play on the safer side, which is what I
Yeah.
would do in that case.
Yeah, and I'm probably the opposite. I swing for the fences. If you're gonna try to win a league, sometimes these are the picks and trades that you need to make. But yeah, it's
Sure.
an interesting one. Next one from Cameron is Trey, Vooch, and Onyeka Okongwu for Giannis a good trade. Again, there's no detail of format of league, but either way, points or category, I've said take the Giannis side. Again,
Yeah.
I've also prefaced that by saying that it also depends on the size of your league. So, as a general rule, for standard size leagues, so 12 teamers, and shallower, so 10s and 8s or whatnot, then you obviously take the best player in the trade, which is Giannis. If it's a deep league, let's say a 16, 18, 20 plus league, that's where you consider greater depth. So, having Trey, Vooch, and Onyeka, it's a tempting one, but let's assume that it's a 12-team league in a points or a category league. Which side are you going?
Honestly, I would rather have whoever's getting Giannis in this trade is getting a steal, I think. I think that's a little bit too much to give up for him. Especially my concern here is that there's a lot of rumors regarding Clint Capella, and if he's traded away, Onyeka gets inserted into that starting role, and we've seen how impactful he can be with that. And Vucevic, he'll be back soon to his normal self. I just feel like it's a little bit much to give up for Giannis.
Right. So you're taking the other side.
I am.
Yeah. If it was a roto, I'm taking Trey, Vooch, and Onyeka because Giannis is going to kill your free throws, and it's harder to win in roto when you are punting free throws. But if it was a standard league, category league, head to head, I'd still probably take the Giannis side. And then you just fill in those other spots with some decent waiver wire pickups because that's the whole thing. When you're playing in deeper leagues, you don't have that depth of talent on the waiver wire to just replenish. Whereas in a standard league or shallower, you do have some really good options on the waiver wire. We go through all those ads every single week, and I think you can make that up and get the best player, get the better per game average as well, and just really dominate your league. But yeah, it really depends on your format, so the size of your league as well. But also if you want to hope for a Clint Capella trade as well. So as Kayla said, Onyeka Okongwu is going to go nuts if that trade does go down. But of course, we can't always assume that that's going to happen. But I think it will happen.
Most likely.
Yeah. All right, who do you add? Duop Reith or Trey Jones? Again, no background into the format, but I think just on the surface, I'm going Trey Jones just for sustained value. I think we spoke about Duop only having value whilst DeAndre Ayton's out.
So I think it really depends on how long you plan on streaming them for. If you're short-term, Duop, long-term, Trey Jones.
Yeah, good answer, actually. From Academic 40, interesting name. What do you think about Dennis Smith Jr. rest of season value? We spoke about Dennis Smith. I think he's a really nice ad, someone to at least pay attention to coming to the back end of this week and someone to potentially pick up. As we said, he was playing over Dinwiddie to finish the last game. The Nets really like what he brings, but again, with Ben Simmons potentially back in a fortnight, that does complicate things. But I like Dennis Smith rest of season. There's a few factors that go into it. So I think shorter term, yes, I think he can be a nice pickup. Longer term, let's wait and see. It really depends on Ben Simmons.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah. From Sam, thoughts on Kobe White for Scoot, considering Levine is back. I guess, yeah, that does impact on Kobe White, but we saw in the last game, Kobe White had a great game, and this is with Levine back in the lineup. Or is White's production still going to be high? As I said, yeah, it was still pretty high next to Levine. So would you go Kobe or Scoot?
I'd rather have Kobe. I actually do have him in one of my points leagues, and even with Levine's return, he's still been pretty good. And I also have a feeling that Levine will be traded soon. We all know that there's a lot of rumors surrounding the Bulls' stars right now. And if that's the case, Kobe White is going to go nuclear. With Scoot, I'm a lot more hesitant. He did have a really slow start to the season, but he's starting to trend upwards now. But I still have a lot of concerns, and I'm still a little bit hesitant about adding him to my team. But he's someone that I would stream.
Yep. Yeah, I'm with you. I think Scoot's looked better recently, but Kobe White for me. From Fantasy Football Whiz, this is actually a comment or a question of both Adam and myself. So he was questioning why Joop Reith was a pickup, and we've gone through that. I think just a nice short-term pickup whilst DeAndre Ayton's been out. But the second part, so what situations is Poole worth dropping? So I think Adam mentioned in one of his tweets that it depends on the situation that Jordan Poole could be worth dropping. I think the situation is really dependent on your categories, how you're standing. So if you're high up in the standings, you're comfortable and you think you're going to be comfortably making the playoffs, I think he's worth holding. But if you're struggling and you really need that production, then he could be considered dropping in a 12-teamer. What do you think from a points perspective?
From a points perspective, I would say I would rather trade him than drop, because you probably could get something, albeit it's not going to be anything really good. But it's always worth a shot with trading. And the other thing is, too, you have to remember that the trade deadline is coming up. Kuzma is receiving a lot of buzz. So if that's a potential trade that the Wizards make, we could see a little bit of increased usage that might change the situation a little bit. So I'd rather monitor and potentially trade if needed.
Yep, great call, great call. Yeah, we got to watch out for Kuzma. He's getting a lot of attention right now. And finally, is Andre Drummond a drop with Vooch back? Again, I think potential drop, but he's still performing alongside of, not necessarily on the same court alongside of each other, but splitting those minutes right now. Andre Drummond is probably worth a hold, and I've got him in a couple of leagues. But once Vooch ramps up his minutes, I think, a lot of value for Andre Drummond will be gone. So for now, hold and then a drop once Vooch ramps up.
Yep, I agree with you exactly there.
Nice. All right, Kayla, that's the end of the presentation. Now, do you have any final thoughts?
Final thoughts would be to monitor injury situations. We had a lot of really prominent players go down this week, so keep an eye on how the lineups work out with that, especially with like the Pistons, the Grizzlies, and make adjustments as needed.
Yep, fantastic. Keep an eye out for all injuries. Keep an eye out for our Twitter as well. So you'll find Kayla at Kayla_Fonte. You'll find me at NBA Fantasy Bible. It was awesome having Adam King come on board today and join us for our pod. Thank you very much, Kayla. Have a wonderful week. I'm going on holiday today, so I'm really happy. Yes, thank you. So we'll see if we can do an episode in the next 7 days. I'll see what I can do. I may have some limitations in my luggage, so we'll see what happens there. But I'll be in touch. But thank you very much, guys. And
thank you.
Until next one.
All right.
Thanks,
See ya.
See ya.